and he called to Moshe. A new book, a new parsha, Vayikra, and he called. But who called? Why is the caller not identified? Is it Hashem, as we might presume? Yet the verse continues, and God spoke to Moshe. So, if it's Hashem who's the caller, why is he not identified initially? And what's with that small aleph? We know how precise the lettering is in Torah, and occasionally, to bring our attention, it has a small or enlarged letter. The last letter of the first word of this parsha, which begins the new book, the book commonly referred to as the book of the Levium, the laws of the Kohanim, the book called Vayikra, has that small aleph. Chassidus emphasizes that while, of course, Hashem is with whom we are interacting, yet there is a quality of God that is unidentifiable even by the name of Hashem, which we can't pronounce, for that too is still a name. This week we begin the third book of the Torah, the centerpiece of Torah. The dynamic, the exciting, the perhaps most well-known parts of Torah are in the first two books, from creation through the great story of the Exodus, in the fourth book about our journey throughout the wilderness, and in that fifth and final book where Moshe Rabbeinu recaps all of Torah. The laws in this book are limited to a minority within a minority. They speak predominantly of the laws of the Kohanim, a subset of one single tribe, and yet it is the centerpiece. Herein, Chassidus emphasizes that while the literal discussion relates only to a very specific group of people, the Kohanim, the descendants of Aaron, its message is ultimately to Mamleches Kohanim, to the nation of Kohanim, the nation of priests, to those who so devote themselves to a level of godliness that they, like the priests, are completely detached from the material world. It speaks of the karbonos, this odd series of offerings that seem to defy any rational, reasonable, what's in it for me type of explanation. And so who is it that calls to us? A level which cannot be articulated, a depth of godliness which cannot be identified. Whereas the first two books of the Torah speak about our interrelationship with the world around us, and the last two books of the Torah speak of the battles with which we waged against those who stood in our way of reaching the Holy Land, this middle book is the special cocoon-like experience between, exclusively, the Bnei Yisroel and Avinu Shebashamayim, God himself, a level of godliness so intense that it calls out to us in hopes that we will respond down to that most sublime spiritual pure level, that inner level. That's what God calls to us, and thus the small aleph represents that tiny, that imperceptible, that infinite quality that exists within each one of us. Let us access that and transform the world from a place that is entangled in its godliness into a place that's godliness is evident. Good job.